Thank you, Presiding Officer, for your confidence in the value of my contribution. Let me just start by saying the Tories might be well advised not to try and fight previous battles. Mr. Chapman referred to independence 4 times in the first 2 minutes of his speech, 7 times in all. We've had one additional reference from Dean Lockhart. In last week's debate, he made 15 references to independence. I'm going to focus on the subject of today's debate because that's what matters to rural people in Scotland. And let me start, Presiding Officer, by saying the Scottish Fishermen's Federation is absolutely correct when they talk about the opportunities that derive from Brexit. I have, throughout my entire political life, campaigned against the common fisheries policy. There's no change from this member of the Parliament. But what we have to be absolutely careful about is that Westminster is not allowed to sell out interests of our fish-catching sector once again, as they did when they took us into the common fisheries policy. Tory government did that. We can't allow a Tory government to do that again. The National Farmers Union, too, I want to agree with. The National Farmers Union seeks common ground on major red lines, future trade agreements, agricultural support, and labour in their industry. So I hope that we can make progress in this debate and agree that it's important that our agricultural industries continue to have access to labour. It's fishing, it's agriculture. Scottish strawberries might be under threat if we can't get people to come and pick them. But on fishing, the issue of most concern to my constituents, it's control over our fishing grounds that is a must-win issue for fishing communities in Scotland and beyond. The Chief Executive of the National Federation of Fishermen's Organisations, which is roughly the English equivalent of RSFF, said in Fishing News last week, the issues will be access, our boats in other nations' waters, foreign boats in ours. And he's correct. In the murky waters of international negotiations, it seems anything goes. Internal negotiations within the UK illustrate this. Actually, generally, decisions simply handed down from UK ministers. We've seen in the last year a delay over summer monkfish swap that the Cabinet Secretary referred to, preference given to English whitefish trawlers rewhiting an Arctic cod, top slicing of North Sea whiting from Scotland handed to English inshore fleet, and an allocation of an excessive amount of mackerel, again, to the English inshore fleet. So in determining a UK position, there must be agreement from all the jurisdictions that are affected by this issue, not simply a position that reflects the needs of one. Now, Scottish ministers are well used to representing the UK and agreed UK positions on the international stage. A quick look at my ministerial diaries identified at least 5 such occasions where I represented the UK, representing a UK position. But negotiations, of course, proceed in part along paths determined by the party on the opposite side of the table. And that means one has to have a minister at the top of his or her game to lead on negotiations. Now, as it happens in Scotland, we have some of the best negotiation trainers in the world, and I write in today's Banffshire Journal about their methods. And if you want to read my comments, they can be read at negotiate.stewartstevenson.scot. So, they'll be excellent, Mr Rumbles, well worth the read. So to give our industry confidence, we need a minister leading fisheries negotiations for the UK who has a bigger stake in the outcome than any UK minister is likely to have. It needs to be a Scottish minister. And it's also likely to be good for UK fishermen out with Scotland, as such a minister is much less likely to sell out fishing industries for some undisclosed trade-off, as happened 40 years ago. Let's look at the position of Tory UK Scottish Secretary David Mundell, a rich source of quotes. In the Press and Journal, he said, The idea we would go back to a position where we were entirely in control of our own fishing is not one that is realistic. Sold out again by the Tories before the talks have even started, just like the CFP and the Tories. But equally, we must consider the position of communities dependent on processing the bounty of our seas, from the artisanal smokehouses and processors in small West Coast and island communities to the large industrial processors in my constituency and elsewhere. For them, access to labour and access to market are vital. The EU is the largest fish market in the world, and it takes in particular premium products which have the highest margins and therefore contribute differentially to higher profits than other markets. Outside the single market, even when there is access to it, countries find it particularly difficult to export to the EU without cost and time penalties and without discrimination against particular fish species and particular food products. And without the many foreign nationals who work in fish processing, production must inevitably drop. We simply can't staff the factories in Banffshire and Buchan Coast, in Fraserburgh and in Peterhead in particular, without nationals coming from elsewhere. Now, the government in the UK is as opaque as ever in its plans. There is an emerging indication of what is called a hard Brexit, and others have made reference to that. But that would hit fishing communities particularly hard and undermine the advantages derived from leaving the common fisheries policy. Presiding officer, we've seen that the Tories are trying to cover this debate, cover their failures by referring to other matters. I think the issue that has really got us to the point that we're in, the blank sheet of paper that is the plan for Brexit, still a blank sheet of paper, contrasts with what happened in 2014, when there was a 650-page document able to be analysed and attacked, dissected, of the plans that there were. Let me close, presiding officer, by simply quoting the Austrian Empire's foreign minister in the 1800s, Count Metternich. Events which cannot be prevented must be directed. The Brexit cannot now be prevented. It's time for a wee bit of direction from the UK government, and if they won't do it, we'll tell them what to do.